and welcome to another Language Professora video. I said hola, so that means it's all about Spanish. Let's get into it. Now, this is the second part of our four-part series on pronunciation of Spanish words, which incorporates syllabification, rules of stress, accents and why we use them, and pretty much we're going to be looking at some examples in terms of practicing how we break up our words into syllables. In part one, we looked at vowels. How do vowels separate? How do they sound? When do we keep them together in terms of forming our syllables and pronouncing our words properly? In Spanish, that is. That was part one. In this part, part two, we're going to be looking at consonants. So let's head up. This is part two. Syllabification. This is just a big word, which means breaking our words into syllables so that we can better pronounce them. And these are our consonants that we're now looking at. Now, consonants, just as a reminder, from those things that you were taught in basic school and primary or prep school, those are your letters that are not vowels. So we have 5 vowels in the English alphabet, so automatically you have 21 consonants. In Spanish, we have a little bit more because we do have 30 letters in the Spanish alphabet, so you now have 25 consonants working with. But that's not really that important right now. Let's look at the rules regarding breaking your words into syllables when it comes onto your consonants. Now, for the vowels, we had 4 rules. For the consonants, we also have 4 rules. Now, rule 1 says, when 2 consonants come together, meaning when you find them side by side in a word, this is what you're going to do. And I'm going to be using numbers. Number 1 goes with the vowel that comes before it. And number 2 goes with the vowel that comes after. And we're going to demonstrate that right now. Let's look at this example. So here we have, and I'm deliberately using this word because there is something in it that we did in part 1. So this is our word. We're looking at the consonants right now. So let's find them. We have consonant, vowel, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel. A little trick that I teach my students sometimes, if they're not quite sure, just label the letters first of all. So we have consonant, vowel, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel. So you see 2 consonants right there. The rule says the first one, so we're going to number them as well, number 1 and number 2. That's why I use the numbers. Number 1 goes with the vowel that comes before it, which is in this direction. Number 2 goes with the vowel that comes after it, which is in this direction. So it therefore means that when, remember again, we're breaking up our word, when you are breaking this word into syllables, you put your separation there. So you end up with siesta, siesta. Now, there is something happening here. We have 2 vowels, and I have to go back to this because we did this in part 1. When you have 2 vowels coming together, something happens. They're either going to separate or they're going to stay together, depending on the category of vowels that they are. So do you remember what category I belongs to? Is I a weak or a strong vowel? If you said I is strong, I strongly suggest that you go and look at part 1. I is not a strong vowel. I is a weak vowel. So automatically, when you have a weak vowel in the mix, it's going to be staying together, no matter how you want to fix it. I is just weak and I has to be supported. So I is a weak vowel, S is a strong vowel, but it doesn't really matter. Once you don't have two strong vowels coming together, they stay together. And that is why we don't separate those two. Okay, so that's 1. Now, rule 2 is kind of going to piggyback on rule 1. It's like you have rule 1 and then rule 1 part B. So it's like an exception to rule 1. And this is what happens. Rule 2 now says, coming from rule 1, when number 2, that's consonant number 2, is, I'm going to change the colors for these, L or R, they stay together. So let's think about that. In part 1, we said the two consonants coming together, the first one goes with the vowel before, the second one goes with the vowel after. But this is now saying, this exception is now saying, when that number 2 consonant is either L or R, they stay together. So number 1 kind of goes out the window once that second one is L or R. And in part 1, I had a particular word that I said I would come back to, and this is the word. Remember that? And we broke it up accordingly. Now, here is what happened when we broke it. We got qua and tro. See that? The T and the R are in one syllable, because even though we have a consonant number 1 and a consonant number 2, the R, as the rule says, is number 2, so it is not separated from the T. But let's look at another example where we can actually look at it and break it up for ourselves. This is a beautiful example. And it's beautiful because it incorporates rule 1 and rule 2. Let's find it. Well, first of all, let's label it to make it easier for us. So we have vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant. What are we looking for? Our consonant being together. So we have 2 sets of those. We have one here and we have one here. Let's number them. Number 1 and 2, number 1 and 2. Now let's look at the rules. Number 1 says when you have 2 consonants coming together, first one goes with the vowel before, second one goes with the vowel after. Rule 2 says when that second one is L or R, you don't separate them, they stay together. So let's examine. Here we have number 2 being the letter R. So it means that these 2 are going to stay together. Over here, however, when we look at number 2, it's neither L nor R, so it means that we will separate it right there. But let's look at the rest of it now. Let's change the color ink right here. There we go. Can see that a little bit better. So we have one separation taking place. Now, because we can't separate these, they're going to stay together automatically. So naturally, remember we spoke about that natural proclivity or that natural inclination for how you're going to pronounce? So we're going to keep the A in a syllable by itself, and then the pren in a syllable by itself. So this word all broken up looks like a pren den. Isn't that a lovely example? I think so. I think it's a beautiful one because it brings out both rules at the same time. So that's 2 rules down, 2 to go. Rule 3. So in rule 1, we looked at 2 consonants. And in rule 2, we also looked at 2 consonants. But what happens if you end up with 3 consonants in a word? As in 3 consonants coming together in a word. It's not impossible. But how would we treat it? So the rule now says, when 3 consonants come together, okay, number 1 and number 2 go with the vowel before, and number 3 goes with the vowel after. Let us see just how that is going to work with this example. So here is our example. Let us label the letters: vowel, consonant, 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 vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel. So remember now, we're looking for those 3 consonants coming together. And when we find them, we want to number them. 1, 2, 3. Uno, dos, tres. So the rule says the first 2, which is 1 and 2, would go with the vowel before, and then number 3 would go with the vowel after. So by default, we know that we are breaking our word here between 2 and 3. We spoke about that natural proclivity for pronunciation. So breaking up the rest of it shouldn't be too much of a challenge. So this now becomes ins, t, to, to. So this is how it now looks when you have it broken up. Ins, t, to, to. As simple as that. But no one said Spanish was simple. Let's look at the complexity that's going to come with rule number 4. So rule 4, similar to rule 2, is piggybacking or feeding from rule 3. So it is an exception to rule 3. So the exception goes, if number 3 is just like in number 2, if number 3 is L or R, this is what happens. Number 1 only goes with the vowel before, and then numbers 2 and 3 go with the vowel after. Let's look at an example. So in our example, we have, let's label our letters: consonant, vowel, consonant, 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 vowel, consonant. And we're looking for our 3 consonants coming together. And for this rule, we're looking to see the 3rd consonant being L or R. And when we number our consonants, 1, 2, 3, uno, dos, tres, that 3rd one is the letter R. It therefore means that that 3rd one is going to be staying with the 2nd one. We're not going to be separating the T and the R. So our break, rather than coming here, as rule 3 would have said, it's now going to come here between 1 and 2. And we end up with mostrar. In a nutshell, those are your consonant syllabification rules. Let's recap. Rule 1 says when you have 2 consonants coming together, the first one goes with the vowel before, the second one goes with the vowel after. The exception to that is rule 2, which says if the second consonant is L or R, then they stay together. They don't separate. Rule 3 says when you have 3 consonants coming together, numbers 1 and 2 go with the vowel before, and number 3 goes with the vowel after. Rule 4 is an exception to rule 3, which says if that 3rd consonant is L or R, you don't separate that R or that L from the other consonant. So it's only consonant number 1 that will go with the vowel before, and 2 and 3 go with the vowel after. In a nutshell, those are your consonant rules for syllabification. Please join me for part 3 when we go even deeper into pronunciation and the rules of stress. Now that we've gone through how you separate, how do you now know when you're pronouncing the word, which syllable to put your stress on? So join me for that video, part 3. Adios.